type of spirit lives in this, or that the rock itself has spirit.
岩倉って
The spirit of the god is inside, and the stone carries a special spiritual meaning now.
Okay, that's amazing. I need to walk around. I have no idea how massive this is.
ちょうどこれ下を見てください
So you want to just look down below here.
浮いてるように見えます
It looks like it's floating over the water.
It really does.
天の浮き石
The name for this rock is Amano Ukiishi, or the floating rock from the heavens.
そうですまさにこの岩を作った神様の一人
So this monolith is said to be related to one of the first gods that descended from the heavens to Japan, and he is said to have traveled over the country on a sky ship made out of a giant rock, which was called Amano Iwahune, which is the heavenly rock ship.
So what you're telling me is that there is an ancient Japanese legend that speaks of a deity flying around in the sky with a gigantic vehicle made of stone?
まさしくそうです
Absolutely.
So do you think that is the reason why it was called a vehicle made of stone? Because it was so powerful and strong and virtually indestructible that the story became it's a vehicle made of stone.
空から見て地上を見た
You're absolutely right, because the gods were flying over the land on a giant ship. It wasn't a plane because it didn't have wings. It looked like a ship made out of very hard material that was like a very hard stone, and they would descend from the heavens and down onto the land, and thus they would travel around the country.
According to the Japanese, otherworldly beings have been visiting their islands for over 12,000 years.
The earliest culture that we can identify in Japan is the Jomon, which is originally a Stone Age culture running roughly from 10,000 BCE to 300 BCE. It is a culture that we don't know an awful lot about because they had no writing system. All we have is artifacts.
But the little that we do know about the Jomon comes from archaeological evidence, and one of the most representative artifacts that is tied to the Jomon is the Dogu statue.
Approximately 15,000 Dogu figurines resembling strange humanoid beings have been found throughout the Japanese islands. Ancient astronaut theorists suggest these figurines represent the very kami the Japanese believe descended to this world in the ancient past.
There are thousands of these statuettes that have been recovered, and these figures have goggle-type eyes, and they have rivets all over their body, indicating that they're wearing some kind of a spacesuit or technological armor.
So you have to ask yourself, were these statues sky beings who came and directed the Japanese to have their civilization and culture, and that ultimately these sky gods are their ancestors?
Do the Dogu figures represent extraterrestrials that visited Japan thousands of years ago? And could they have descended in a craft that resembled the monolith called Ishinohoru, as ancient astronaut theorists suggest? Perhaps further clues can be found in Japan's official historical texts, which describe the islands as inhabited by otherworldly beings. Ise, Japan. In the center of this remote coastal city is a massive complex of 125 individual shrines erected 2,000 years ago, dedicated to the supreme goddess of Shintoism, Amaterasu.
When Amaterasu is residing in the terrestrial plane instead of the celestial plane, her home is the grand shrine at Ise, which is built without any nails, any metal fastenings whatsoever. It's also architecturally unlike any other shrine in Japan.
architects still have difficulty comprehending how this palace was built. It is the most important shrine in Shintoism and has been visited by hundreds of millions of pilgrims over thousands of years. Now, allegedly, the shrine contains something called the Sacred Mirror, one of Japan's 3 most sacred artifacts, which are collectively known as the Imperial Regalia of Japan. They were given by Amaterasu to Emperor Jimmu, the first emperor of Japan. And they have only been seen by the emperors and high priests of Japan. But what were they? And why is the public not allowed to see them? If these are items that are brought to Earth by celestial beings, then by definition, that would make them of extraterrestrial origin. Is it possible that the Ishino Hoden Megalith and the Ise Grand Shrine are physical evidence of extraterrestrial visitations in Japan's ancient past? And might the Prime Minister of Japan and his cabinet still have connections to these same otherworldly beings? Perhaps the answer can be found by more closely examining Emperor Jimmu and the stories that he was guided by an intelligence that spoke to him from the sky. Coming up, why would they label a boat a flying boat?
I don't think our ancestors pulled this out of their own imagination. They actually saw flying boats, thus the legends were born.
Osaka, Japan. In the middle of this modern metropolis lies the Daisen Kofun, a tomb for one of Japan's long line of divine emperors. Covering over 400,000 square meters, the Daisen Kofun is considered the largest tomb by area in the world. There are more than 160,000 Kofun dotting the Japanese archipelago, all of which contain the remains of emperors or their royal families.
There are burial mounds throughout the world. However, there's one specific shape that exists only in Japan, and this is the keyhole kofun.
Most of these can only be seen from the sky. This raises the question as to why emperors would be buried in such a way that they're actually being memorialized and being seen from the sky. The Japanese believed that the royal family was descended from bones that came from the sky. So we have to wonder, is this a way for the extraterrestrials to identify the tombs of their ancestors? Could the thousands of Kofun dotting the Japanese islands contain the bodies of extraterrestrial beings? Curiously, in 2016, researchers studying high-resolution photos of the surface of Mars spotted an eerily similar keyhole-shaped mound. Is this possibly a Kofun found on Mars, bearing some lost extraterrestrial god? If so, we can see that there's definitely a connection between what we're seeing on Mars and some type of Kofun burial site, and over 160,000 of these found all over Japan. Could the Kofuns in Japan and the alleged structure on Mars contain definitive proof of a link to beings from outside our world? To investigate this theory further, Giorgio Tsoukalos and Takaharu Mikami were granted special access to one of Japan's oldest tombs, the Ishibutai Kofun. Oh man, it's gigantic.
It's megalith from 6th century AD.
Okay.
これ一番大きいもので77トン
The largest rock on this tomb list weighs about 77 tons.
Have they calculated the weight of all rocks combined?
全部足すとですね
Altogether, this would weigh about 2,300 tons.
Wow, that's incredible. Can we go inside?
Yes.
All right.
these rocks up there is the one that's 77 tons.